name is Elizabeth. I'm presenting on Wells Fargo and their financial reports from 2020. Okay, so they were founded in March of 1852 by Henry Wells and William G. Fargo. They're considered one of the 4 big banks here in the U.S. And as of 2020, they had $1.95 trillion in assets. Just to make my presentation a little less confusing, I just put a brief explanation of what I'll be going over and what a financial analysis is. It's just the analysis of a business's financial statements and related information to determine business value and profitability. Again, our report is based on their 2020 annual report, and I will also be analyzing a couple of the different financial ratios, especially ones that are specific to the banking industry. So first, I'm going to go over the revenues, and that's just the amount of money a business receives from the sale of a product. Their net interest income for 2020 was $39.8 million, and then their non-interest income was $32.5 million. So that's a total of $72.3 million for 2020. And then if we compare that to 2019, it was $85 million. So it's up quite a bit. Overall, we saw a decrease of $12.7 million, or roughly 15%. And then as far as their expenses go, that's just the money or other value surrendered in order to operate a business. We saw non-interest expense of $57.6 million for 2020, and then for 2019 it was $58.1 million. And then that was only a decrease of less than $1 million. So in comparison to their loss of $12.7 million in revenue, that small decrease in expenses is kind of gonna, hit them harder. Okay, and then for their net income, which is just the revenue that they had minus their expenses, we only saw $3.3 million for 2020, and in comparison to 2019, it was $19.5 million. Their comprehensive income was reported as $4.8 million for 2020 and $24 million for 2019. So for net income, we saw a $16.2 million decrease in their net income. And that comprehensive income down there includes their net income and all their other comprehensive incomes and unrealized gains or losses, such as investments or currency exchanges. And that number down there is considered more detailed and less misleading for stockholders. Oh, it was a total of, 84% decrease in net income. So that's a really big change. Okay, and then we're going to get into some of the ratios. These are all the ones that I'll be going over, and those are just relative comparisons of 2 line items from a company's financial statements. So first is their net interest margin, and that just shows a bank's net profit on interest income earning assets such as loans. To calculate that, I just took the interest received and subtracted the interest paid, divided it by their average assets. And for 2020, they reported a net interest margin of 2.27%. And for 2019, it was a little bit higher, 2.73%. This ratio really is just an easy way to see if they're making money or losing money on interest. There's a lot of outside factors that affect this ratio, mostly just economic and monetary policy that will change this. It's really out of control for banks, because as rates change, it's going to affect how much interest they're receiving or paying. Okay, and then their return on assets, this is the per dollar profit earned on all of their assets. To calculate this, I took the net income and divided it by the average total assets. And for 2020, they had a return on assets of 0.17%. And for 2019, it was higher, 1.02%. And then this ratio is a good way to evaluate how much money they're making on their investments and assets. This one's pretty straightforward, and you It's just a percentage of how much they're earning on all the assets that they have. This number is really low for two reasons, especially that drop to 2020. That huge net income decrease really affected this number. And then they also have an asset cap of 1.95 trillion right now, which is going to make them have a harder time getting this number up. We'll go over the asset cap later also. And then for the price to earnings ratio, this is just a stock assessment that compares a company's share price to its earnings per share. So this one they broke down by the quarter, and we take their market value per share and divide it by the earnings per share. So that gives us our P/E ratio. And then, like I said, this is by quarter in 2020. So it was a little low, and then it kind of shot up towards the end of the year. And surprisingly, the 2020 price to earnings is way higher than the 2019, from what I found. And that's mostly because their earnings per share dropped so much in 2020 that it was being divided by such a lower number. Yeah, so that earnings per share really decreased this number a lot in 2020. And then their loan to deposit ratio. So this just evaluates a bank's liquidity in their funds. Their loan to deposit ratio was 46.25 for 2020, and it was just a little bit lower than it was in 2019 when it was 59.5. I went to calculate this. I took total loans and divided by their total deposits. This ratio, so a lower ratio would indicate that they have an excessive amount of liquid funds, and they could be earning a higher rate of return on that by lending it out. Whereas a higher ratio would indicate that they actually have less liquidity in funds, which seems kind of backwards, but when you calculate it, it makes sense. But yeah, if they don't have enough to cover any unforeseen expenses or costs, that liquidity is like, you really have to have enough to cover all of that, so they can get in trouble with this number a lot. And then their efficiency ratio, this just indicates how well a company is using its assets to make a profit. This, you just take all of their expenses, not including interest, which is a lot of their income, or expenses, and you divide it by their revenue. And the ratio for 2020 was 80% compared to 68% in 2019. A lower percentage here indicates more efficient operations, and we saw that jump honestly just because they're not performing so well. They're not able to be as efficient as they could be in the past. The only two things that can impact this are their expenses and their revenue. So when either of those changes drastically, it's going to affect this number a lot too. And then I want to go over their risks, which they have a lot of. So they still struggle with a negative image. They've been struggling with this since around 2008, for good reason in my opinion. They've had a lot of scandals between now and then. So obviously they were in the 2008 financial crisis. They're still feeling the consequences. They actually just got fined in 2018 $2.1 billion to settle allegations that they misled their investors with the risk and the quality of their mortgage loans. And then they have had some problems with the mistreatment of their employees. In 2013, an article came out that basically exposed the really toxic sales culture that they kind of post in the branches. It really plagued the whole company, and it kind of came up that the sales goals were so unattainable that they had employees that were driven to the point where they were opening fake accounts, opening people credit cards that they didn't need, and yeah, it was over 1 million fraudulent accounts or credit cards, and that impacted their image a lot. They're still struggling with this. Their history of unequal lending. So in 2012, Wells finally settled a lawsuit claiming that African American and Hispanic borrowers who qualified for loans were charged higher rates and fees, and they were improperly placed in subprime loans. This settlement was for $184 million. And then, oops, the same one, they found themselves here again. They're still struggling with this one. They're in another lawsuit right now. They're being sued for the same allegations of discrimination, and this one still hasn't been settled yet. That came out in 2018. The asset cap that I briefly talked about earlier, the Federal Reserve placed that on Wells Fargo in 2018, and Jerome Powell himself has said that they are still yet to clean up their act, and there really is no set time when this is going to be removed. It's really handicapping them. I mean, their assets right now have already hit 1.95 trillion, so they could be higher if there wasn't a cap. So they're losing a lot of money on this. And Jerome Powell also made it clear that if they don't clean up their act and make changes, there will be more consequences. So it really could get bad for them if they don't fix it. And then kind of on the same note, they're really being watched by the government right now. The Federal Reserve is really monitoring them. And like I said, he said himself, they won't be hesitant to impose new penalties if they don't do it. Right now, overall, I think they're in a really sticky situation, and I think that as far as their performance, image, and regulation, they're going to have a really hard time changing it. It's kind of sums it up. I think that's the best way to say it. I mean, they're in a really tough spot, and if they're, it'll be really interesting actually to see how their finances work for this year with all the rate increases and stuff. Another thing I didn't really mention, a lot of these numbers were affected by the fact that they increased their amount set aside for credit losses by $11.4 million. So they expected a lot of losses this year, but I think this was higher than they were expecting. Yeah. That's it. Thank you guys. Are there any questions?
What's the point of the asset cap?
So they, with all the risks that I listed, basically the Federal Reserve doesn't trust them to manage all their funds. They don't trust, the way that they operate in the branch. They don't. The Federal Reserve doesn't trust them with that much assets. So they've capped it at a certain point, and they've already hit it. So, yeah.
So when they've hit that cap, what does that mean for like incoming revenue? Or does that affect it?
Most of it, from what I read, it mostly impacts their ability to lend more. So, they can't, that's how banks make money, is lending money, because they get the interest back on it. So because they can't give out new loans, they have to earn less money. So I think they're really just watching how much they're spending on funding loans and stuff. So they have to prevent themselves from being able to make more money. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah.
I know you work in banking, so I was curious, what was something that was interesting to you, or kind of an eye-opening experience in your research?
I think honestly the biggest shock to me was just, in general, I actually did some comparison to the bank that I work for, and the bank that I work for is actually performing really well. So it was kind of shocking to see, this bank is way bigger than the bank I work for, and I don't want to say they're failing, but they're having such a hard time. It's kind of shocking to me that they still have this big image of being this amazing, friendly, homey feeling bank. I think that was the biggest shock for me. I'm not saying it's a horrible bank by closer accounts, it's just they're really struggling internally with a lot of different factors that are affecting their profitability.
Do you think that this fact is due to the bank where you're working is working way better in the community instead of Wells Fargo maybe done taking care of so much of the little community and just is busy to make big investment and be working much more for
profit.
Yeah.
Kind of, because I think the business model, the bank that I work for, they really focus on having a close connection with the people that bank there. So most of the people that we do see are like business owners, or we know them really well. I think that they've just grown so big, they can't really offer that anymore. I mean, with the sales goals, I can't imagine that an employee who has these impossible sales goals is gonna have an easy time giving good customer service. I think that is a big part of it, yeah.
Awesome, great. Great, and then I'm gonna have you guys do the commentary on the form really quick while I set up our second presentation. If you're able to pass that around.
Good morning, everyone. So for the presentation with a class of Business 120, I'm talking about Hyatt Corporation Hotel. Everyone's know Hyatt Corporation Hotel? Okay. Maybe someone stay in some hotels. And my name is Mamotechi, and I'm comfortable. I just write down some point we are going to touch. We were talking about management and social, corporate social responsibility, the accounting, financial management. That was the part where we were talking about more, and a little part of magazine, marketing and social media, human resources, and a little conclusion and some talking or discussion. That is the part I would love to make more. As you can see here, there is a little idea of what is this Hyatt Bank Corporation. So it was founded in 1950 around by Robert Devon and Diane Crouch, two people. But few years later, Gabe Pritzker bought this hotel for $2.2 billion. That for the 50s was a lot of money. And since he bought this hotel, transferred the headquarters from LA to Chicago, and changed a little bit the idea of hotels. So starting to incorporate in the company not just hotels, but also a tourism agency, software design, security companies, in order to able invest money in the company that actually are part of the company. And that is a nice idea, because your money is in some way come back in the same company. Hyatt Worldwide Hotel has 1,600 properties worldwide, 70 countries, 6 continents, and they offer 26 branches. There is Park Hyatt, the most famous. There is Hyatt, Ayala, Hyatt for Family. Each one of the brands has a particularly specific, let's say, characteristic. One is for family, one is for properties, one is for businessmen, one is for conference, and let's say Park Hyatt is the fancy one. And the president-in-chief actual is Mark Oldzaperman, this one here. Talking about a little bit about the management and social corporate social responsibility. By the website Great Place to Work, they made a survey between all the employees, and they found that 89% of the employees will love to suggest work for Hyatt Hotel, and they want to continue to do that. Instead of from some other hotels that this website make a survey, looks like only the 57% of people would love to go back in his job. So it looks like the Hyatt has a great idea of how to treat the employees. So they really want that the employees in some way became part of the hotel. The meaning is, if you been accepted in a place, or you feel belong to something, automatically your performance is better, like in the pyramid of Maslow. So if your needs are okay, your performance is better. If your need is not okay, so you start to struggling, maybe blaming something, and then it's not so good. About the race intimacy in the workplace, they have a multicultural, except for the corporate management, where instead they're only American people, and otherwise 30% of them are women. They got some awards about best place to work and for diversity in 2020 and 2021. But it looks like every year they get some nice award around the hotel. And in the hospitality management, best award is like a diamond. There is a 4 diamond that some hotel can get, some of them not, and they are running it. As I told in the beginning, I would love to talk about more about economic part of this hotel. I won't take into consideration the year 2020 because it's too difficult for the analyze during the pandemic. So where all hotels are closed, all transportation closed, all the holiday for people were not there. And in fact, we can see here the world travel or tourism, the impact of the world travel economic income in respect to local product, world product law, world product world product, yeah, internal, okay. Well, so in respect to the whole the economy in the world was just around 10 trillion in the 2019. In the 2020 it was just half and became a little bit better in 2021. We can see that in the graph here, I pick up just 3 most important hotels, so almost the most important competitor for Hyatt, and looks like they follow the same idea. So in the 2019, the income for Hyatt hotel was 3 billion. In respect to the 21, there's 5 billion. The report of loss was similar to the report of loss of the tourist economy in the world. I'm talking about the, as you can see here, there is the total revenue for the 2019 to the 2021. In the 2019 was 5 billion, in the 2021 was 3 billion. So if we analyze this situation in respect of you, we can see that obviously during the pandemic, the hotel lost a lot of money because the income was only just 2 billion. But last year was 3 billion. So for anyone that see this data could say that, well, the hotels were good because get back some income and became better. I love to take into consideration ATBDA, that is the earning before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. That is great. Usually is this data is important from investitor people want, so for share companies or joint venture, so for the big finance, this is the data that usually they're looking for. And if we analyze the data in respect to the income and the data in respect to the expenses, as I did here, we can see that the profit for the 2019 was 28%. The profit for the 2021 was 17%. So actually this company lose profit from 1 year that there wasn't a pandemic, and then last year due that the pandemic is almost gone. Moreover, in the 2019, the expenses, was 72%, and in the 2021, the expenses are 83%. So the expenses increase for 11%, and the profit lose for 11%. So not just this company was going bad because of the pandemic, but probably in this company they don't taking care so much about the regular expenses. So because ADBTA take care about only the regular expenses, in fact you don't take care about taxes and depreciation. In order to get in deeper into economic analysis of this company, we just take a look at the ROE, that is the return for equity. Actually is the number that the investor looking for the dividend. And we can see that the company is not giving the dividend to the shareholders. So probably they are still a little bit hungry. IOTOTAL is present in the social media and tweet in a nice way in respect to Aqua Group, because he sent a lot of information for the frequently guests in Twitter, in Facebook. It's present a lot because IOTOTAL was the first implementing Messenger as a guest service, and in Instagram not so good because you just copy and paste the post, and Instagram people love to see picture, don't want to read something. I analyzed a couple of positions from spa supervisor and now editor and sales manager. Some of them, despite they put some little stars, they love Hyatt for some important reasons. In conclusion, I would love to say that despite the bad economic review we saw until now, the reasons is because IOTOTAL invested $2.7 billion in 2019, 2021 last year, and in this year invested $300 million. So if you invest money, actually the looks like your company is not doing well because your money is saved, and fruit of the money you invested is still growing up. So follow some predictable idea. IOTOTAL will become better in approximately in four years. If you will love to take, if you don't know which brand of, which department of work you want to do, hotels is a nice place because you can find yourself in a funny situation, difficult situation, real serious situation. So hotel is like a family, and you don't really know what's happening, and probably that could stimulate in you, push yourself, and find some skills that you never know that you had. Thank you for watching. Are there any questions?
I think you have questions, I'm gonna pass around the sheet for the commentary, unless you guys already have it. Understand code for it?
Is it? Yeah.
So I was just curious why you chose Hyatt in the hotel industry. Is there, you have a special interest in that industry?
Yeah, I was working in a hotel for around 12 years. So like a spa supervisor for Mandarin Oriental Hotel, and before I worked had like a spa leader therapist for 4 seasons. And so hotels is, and my family was at bar and restaurant for a long time in life. So I was born in this kind of environment, and actually I end up in that. And that's the reasons why I choose an hotel. And I chose actually Hyatt because I would love to go in, I would love to see how the world economic globalization and how a fact as pandemic could affect a company that actually make $5 billion every year. So it's really interesting how the economic could change in a few years.
Yeah. Can I ask a follow-up? I don't know if you did if you looked at it, you may not have been part of your analysis, but did you look at like comparisons with like Marriott or Hilton?
Yeah, as I've listened to see before.
Oh yeah, you did have
Yeah.
those out there.
Hilton worldwide, obviously Hilton is the biggest corporate hotel in the world. He has
Hilton is the biggest?
yeah. Well, Marriott too, but
Oh, yeah, there's
Marriott,
yeah, they're so huge, right? I
Yeah,
have no idea
yeah.
which one is
but I decided to take Hyatt because I was always interested in how an hotel actually could create some other branding and how could manage this branding. And probably if you just have one brand, like Four Seasons, Mandarin Oriental Hotel, you could really focus on your way and don't be distracted. For example, there is Marriott Vacation, it's like a club.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that group is really nice. It's working really well because there's a focus just only on some type of people. So looks like if you want to go in that type of program, it's not a hotel, it's a program, and looks like people that go in this program are only wealthy. So if you decide a way, it's better to manage. But if you try to become wide, like Hyatt became it, buying the Apple Leisure for $2.7 billion, that managing a whole started became difficult.
So do you think that because they have multiple like brands within their big brand, that is like a stable business situation, or would you think that it's a little bit too much to handle?
I think it will take, as I told before, 2 to 5 years to become really stable, or at least, I don't know, because every brand is focused on type of people, but in this way, I think it started becoming difficult have the same policies, have the same rules in each hotel. I don't know, because if you go in a high hotel, it's a 5-star hotel, and I went to waiters, every employee is acting like Four Seasons, so really well. If you go in Ayala, it is in the middle of Hyatt, they're working like in a normal hotel. So that will create a different idea of the brand. In my opinion, I don't know.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And then we have our last presentation before we do our break.
Hi everyone, my name is Emma and I'll be doing a financial analysis on Tesla incorporations. So the history of Tesla, we all know, well, it's common for us to think that Elon Musk is the founder of Tesla, but actually the founder of Tesla was Nikola Tesla, and it was founded in 2003 by two engineers, Martin and Mark. And later, Ian Wright joins a few months later, he joined. And Elon Musk actually invested like $6.5 million in the total of $7.5 million when the three people raced. So technically, he invested more than like 80% at that time. So that makes him like basically like a CEO of that company, like a big percentage shareholders. And there was actually they actually sue each other for like the title of CEO, but then like they finally settled that all five of them are considered CEO of the company. Type of products, so they sell cars, so obviously it's their Model 3, Model Y, Model S cars are very popular, as you can see in the pictures over there. And they also create like energy stations and and solar panels to create like energies, and they also sell their energies. So some threats that they are facing is obviously the impact of COVID-19. And I think that's the impact like worldwide, so it's not just themselves alone. Also, because their technologies are considering like new in the industry, so there are a lot of like product liability claims and suing happening, because there was recently like a crash in China where a Tesla self-driving mode gone out of control, and yeah, that's like one of the product defects because it's a new technology, so errors happens, and it's a really big problem that they need to fix on. And also their batteries are currently made out of lithium ion, which is contradicting because their purpose is to create like sustainable, safe environment, but the lithium ions is actually really bad for the environment. So that is like a controversial that between their products that they are facing. And also their stocks prices are like really dips up and down because of Elon Musk tweets. So it's they need to also like fix their internal like controls of their companies and their public's public voices that could obviously affect their company's stock prices. And also their technology is highly based on like computers, So they could be a victim of cyber attacks, and the data could be leach out, and obviously they could be faced with a lot of consequences. Some opportunities for growth is that they haven't tapped into the Asian market yet, so they can still expand the market into a different continent, because like right now their sales are mostly based in the US and Canada or in the European countries. So yeah, they still have opportunity for growth. And also they could make a lot more affordable car models, because like their average price of a car is about like $50,000 to $60,000 right now. So that's not like an average low price that everyone could buy. So if they can sell their car for cheaper, that would increase in their sales, in the amount of their sales. And they are intent to opening their own battery cells manufacturing, and that would help them reducing the cost by a lot, because currently they're buying their battery cells from Panasonic, which is their main suppliers. So if they make their own battery, then that would reduce the cost by a lot. And also they announced that they would release the new truck product, which the truck is account for 17.6% of the U.S. Automotive market, and if they start selling their truck products, then they could open to even more audience. And also they haven't really the demand for urban taxi is also high. So if they could start providing cars for like Uber, or open up their opportunities into the taxi market. Sustainability that Tesla follow. So even though there's kind of controversies that they're using the lithium battery cells, their car actually release less emissions than like an equivalent ICE car, which is a car that runs on gas. And as I said in the last slide, that they're opening their markets into the truck market. So even though the truck market is only like account for 1.1% of the total amount of cars in as of right now, their percentage of gas emissions is account for 17.9%. So that 1% of car is account for almost like 18% of like bad release in the environment. So if they could create like if they could start making sustainable trucks, then that would reduce the amount of emissions by a lot. And also their energy produced is a lot less than their energy consumed. Also, this is the graph of the waste generated by their manufacturing site. So the new manufacturing site that they made with the new technology releases a lot less waste in compared with the global vehicle manufacturing. And the blue bar represent like the amount of waste gonna be recycled, versus this little like gray bar. It means that the waste that cannot be recycled. So in comparison, they can recycle a lot of waste compared to what they cannot. And also, the amount of water that they use in their manufacturing is like one of the 3 lowest on that graph. In comparison, BMW actually use a little bit less water in manufacturing than them, but they are one of the 3, least used in manufacturing. Least water used in manufacturing. So financial analysis of Tesla. So its net working capital is 7.4 billion compared to actually it should say Honda, which is 5.2 billion. So obviously their net working capital is higher by 2 billion compared to their to Honda, and their current ratio is 1.375 compared with Honda, which is 1.3, which is roughly the same. And the current ratio is basically their current assets divided by their current liabilities. So any number that is larger than 1 means that they have more assets than their liabilities. And their quick ratio is 1.08 compares with Honda, which is 1.05, which is like roughly the same. And their day sales inventory is 44.7 days, and this number is like the average day for them to sell their product, which takes less days compared to Honda for them to sell product. Their day sales and receivable is is a number that tells them like how many days does it takes for them to like taking back the cash that they get from the receivables, and it takes them 13 days compared to Honda, which is like take almost like 59 days. And their cash conversion cycles is 26 days compared to 29 days. And so overall, it's their abilities of converting money, it's a lot better than Honda's. And they earn a net income of 5.6 billion in 2021, which is a 665% increase from 2020. And their gross profit percentage was 25%, which is a lot higher than Honda, which only earns about like 19%. And their net incomes is also like 3 times bigger than Honda, and obviously their profit margins is also twice as much. This means that they are doing really well with earning a profit. So their earning per share is $1.63 compared to Honda, which is $3.66, which is weirdly the earning per share is actually less than Honda, but they don't do like dividend payout, so there were no dividend payout ratio or dividend per shares. And their return on equity is 18.2% compared to Honda, which is around like 7.14%. And assets management could be analyzed through their account receivable turnover ratio, which is 27 compared with Honda around 20. Their inventory turnover ratio is roughly the same compared to Honda, and so, but the difference is that their return on assets is 3 times as much, which means that they are getting their investing money and they are using their assets very efficiently. Tesla debt ratio is 0.49, which compares to the industry is 0.54, and this means that they have a lower debt ratio, and that's a good thing. Their debt to equity ratio is actually higher, but their interest coverage ratio is 6 times as much as the industry. So it tells that they can coverage their interest really well. And advice I would give to Tesla is that they should focusing on expanding their market, because right now there are a lot of markets that they haven't tapped in, and they can still expanding their sales. And also they need to fix the issues with the controversies issue between using lithium ion as their like main ingredients for their batteries, because it goes against with their initial intentions of creating a sustainable environment. So I guess maybe focusing on developing, like finding out new elements that could replace the lithium ion. And also they should definitely pay attention to government laws and regulations, because one of the biggest factors that increased in the sales in 2021 was that the government released, I forgot the exact name, but basically they give tax credit return for people who buy like electric cars. So that accounts for like a huge spike in sales in 2021, because like everyone were like, oh, let's get the tax return because that's benefiting them. So they ended up buying a Tesla for that tax credit, and that's it. Any questions?
Why did you choose to compare Tesla with Honda?
Because my family owns a Honda cars, so and I was like, I don't know, I'm trying to find data for the industry instead of like just Honda itself, but there were a lot of information that the industry overall doesn't have the data for. So I just think that okay, I own Honda, so maybe I'll just do about them. Yeah.
I have another question. Can you, I think it was on like the first slide comparing the finances, can you talk about like the quick ratio, or what was that, just like, that
This
one? Oh yeah, the quick ratio.
Quick ratio, I think it's just, let me just make sure. Yeah, so quick assets divided by their liabilities. So I think it's like, at that, it's measured like the ability of how quickly can they convert their assets. So it's like what they have on hand, and they can immediately convert it into like, oh my god, I really don't know how to explain.
Sorry. I'm not a business major, so I was just kind of curious.
Yeah. You said
Let's
it
see.
yesterday when we were practicing inventory. You were talking about the difference in inventory.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I have time.
Yeah.
Take a minute.
It's okay.
Yes, I think it basically means that like how quick can they pay out the liabilities by using their current, like not current, by that moment, the asset that they have at that moment.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I kind of a question. Did you see any information about their semi trucks? Because I think I saw somewhere in the report that they were starting to send them out, but I was just wondering if that was any.
Actually, I don't think they start like selling them yet, but yeah, they definitely already produce the semi trucks. Honestly, they haven't like really state their like release date, like when are the cars are gonna go into the market, but Tesla always like very vague about like their release date, and like because they normally like announce that like 2 or 3 years ago and say that, oh, I'm gonna release it next year, but then it's not coming until like 2 or 3 years later. Yeah, so does that make my questions?
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you.
And then, just curious, so after learning all this about the company, like, would you buy a Tesla?
The reason why I'm doing Tesla is because I'm planning to buy a Tesla. Yeah. I think yes, but if I can get a loan for it,
Yeah.
honestly, I hope that they will release affordable versions of their car, because I mean, I don't want to throw like a 50-60K on a car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally fair.
I have questions.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I would like to ask you an opinion. So do you think that the the reasons why the income is way better than the Honda is because they don't give the dividend?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's true. But I think when you pay out the dividend, you are. Have you heard of the ex-dividend date? It's like their day that they pay out the dividend. So when they pay out that amount, they lose in their value. So like in the same amount. So I think it does. Maybe it plays a little factor in. But overall, I don't think so because when they pay out, that means that they are losing their assets, and like you know, it's
the
like
shareholders could be happy, no?
sorry.
The shareholders are happy if they give the dividends, no?
Wait, I don't get it.
No?
Like, sorry, what were you saying?
So the shareholders.
The shareholders.
Mm.
Oh, I think I guess on the shareholders' perspective, they are getting the payout amount.
For online, no, for
Yeah,
Honda,
for Honda shareholders, but I don't think Tesla shareholders care so much because like
No.
their prices obviously are like sparking. I think a huge factor is that Tesla is like a really hot company in this moment. It's like their stock prices are not even based on the company's worth anymore. It's based on the demand, and yeah, like you know, it's the market prices mostly are based on the demand. Like you know, the prices are high if there's a high demand. So yeah.
So you would say they're a growth company?
Sorry.
They're a growth company, like a growth stock?
Like they are growth company.
Yeah, like people are investing just because the
Yeah,
company's growing
yeah. A
fast.
lot of people are investing not because they are seeing the company's worth, but because the demand is high, so they just want to throw in the money and hope to like hop on the trend. But you know, it's a little bit risky, I think, because like you don't know when it's gonna crash because that's not like the actual worth of the company. So,
Thank you so much. Okay, so that was our third and final one for this half. And just want to say thank you so much to all of our faculty who helped everybody with their projects. It's a big deal to put that time into your students, and we really appreciate it. So applause for you guys. Yeah, so we finished a little early, so if you guys want to go get some more snacks, go to the bathroom, and we'll probably reconvene in about 15 or 20 minutes. So thanks guys. We have Ariana Johnson presenting physical physics. So we're excited. Okay, yeah, we should be able to.
there's like two.
What slide are we on?
I think 5 and 6.
Okay. Okay, I think you're one.
I can just log in my class if
She said this one. As long as you want to.
it's yeah, I think it might be easier.
No, no, you're good.
Oh, I think I did it.
Yeah.
Oh shit, oh
No,
yeah, you
no,
go,
it's okay.
you go
No, no, you're good. I just want to make sure. I did it. So, this, and if you press on it, I think it's also raise your hand.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
member is Professor Erica Peters, but she actually has a class right now, so she can't be here. Basically, yeah, it's, as it says, physical physics. So basically, in an elevator, when you're standing in an elevator, and if you had a scale sit with you while you were on an elevator, it would read your weight. When you move up, however, you're going to find that you're actually at a higher weight because the force, right here, the normal force is pushing up, which means it takes more force to push you up in order to move you up. However, when you go down the elevator, you'll actually find that you are less, the scale will read less. And you can kind of see like on an acceleration time graph and all of those like fun stuff, but basically this all comes from Newton's first and second law. So Newton's second law says that your force is equal to your mass, which is how much you weigh on Earth, times the acceleration in which you're moving. When you're still, your acceleration is 0. Therefore, your force is just your weight. When you're going down, you have a negative acceleration, and when you go up, you have a positive acceleration because you need force to push you up. Because you standing on the ground is the Earth pushing you up, no, gravity pushing you down, and you pushing yourself up. That's why you stay still. If you were to hold like an object or something, you're going to find it heavier because the force of gravity is trying to push the object down. That's why this table stands, but if I were to drop a pen, gravity is making the object go down. So Newton's first law says that every object will remain at rest or in uniform motion in a straight line unless compelled to change its state by the action of an external force. So we saw the elevator example back here, but then I thought, what if we had a different external force? So meet my external forces. These two, I basically forced to lift weights and me video them. They said yes pretty fast. Basically, this right here is their weight. I have person A, who is the blonde, and person B, who is the other person. This is the weight of person A, and so what I did is, here's a video actually. It will play. Okay. Will it play? Hang on. I'm gonna try this real quick. Okay. So basically, I had him reenact. Oh, hang on. I'm gonna show the volume down because. Okay. I basically had them reenact a motion in which they were to act as if they were lifting a barbell. So that is him going up and then back down. Oh shoot, I got it, I think so. I won't wait to get up.
If you go to 3 dots as well,
Okay, and as you can see, this is his weight. Oh, yeah. As he goes down, his weight is actually less than how much he actually weighs as he moves down because gravity is working with him to push down. However, as he pushes up, he needs extra force in order to stand up. And then we see the motion as he goes up and down and up and down. I won't show the video, but this is the same for person B. The motion, which was on the video, and then the graph of the motion. It's the same exact thing, as in as this goes down, he's squatting down. And once he hits this point, he's at his center of mass. So where he stands is equal to what's on the scale. And then up and down and up and down. So that's just going through the motions. But now we incorporated, oh yeah. So basically this is the Earth's gravitational force is constantly pulling all objects towards the Earth's surface, making the object's weight and accelerating them downwards in a straight vertical line towards the center of the planet. Everybody, while we're walking, we're being pulled down to the center of the planet. But our weight and the force of us pushing up balances that. That's why we don't fall down through the crevice of the Earth. Earth's gravity is applying a force to a barbell, which is what I'm going to have them do next, and the lifter, and trying to pull them straight down towards the floor. Which is why when you lift a weight, you need a certain amount of strength in order to lift a weight. That's why people don't lift more than they can, because they'll drop it or they'll break something because your body isn't physically strong enough to push that weight, which is why they do strength training to get stronger and yada yada yada, all that fun gym stuff. So force is really just a push or a pull that when unopposed will create a change in the velocity in the object that force is being applied to. As gravity pushes down on the bar, the lifter must produce a force up against the bar to keep it from accelerating down towards the floor. If a lifter produces a force that is equal to the weight of the bar doesn't move. However, if the lifter produces more force, it will accelerate upwards. So if I just hold a bar here, then we're good. But I need to put an extra force in order to lift it. And when I drop it, I have no force on it, I'm chilling. My arms don't hurt. So I added weights. Here is weight homie A, as he lifts the barbell. And as you can see here, I'll just look over here. This is him as he pushes upwards. He needs more weight, so he hits this point. As he goes back down, his velocity is changing in the sense that he is moving downwards with the weight. So he moves down faster because there's a weight with him. And then stagnant, he braces back up, so he needs more acceleration to push up, which is why our acceleration goes in an upward direction, and then so on and so forth. And we can see the same for here. So this is actually his acceleration graph. You can see how it mimics the force of the weight, because like he said, as the scale goes down, he's moving downwards, which means he's moving in a downward acceleration towards the earth. And then as he moves back up, he needs a certain amount of force to push himself up, which is why our acceleration goes upwards. And it's obviously a smaller scale. This is the time. This is the time, and then that y-axis is his weight, and then this y-axis is actually his acceleration in meters per second. So now, what if he were to jump off the scale? And that's this. Basically, I had person B jump off the scale. I can play this one actually. So he went down. This is him without a weight. He went down and he jumped. So as you can see here, this is him, like I said, going back down, bracing. Some small little movements. Obviously, we're not perfect humans. The scale will go up and down a little bit. But then this here is him bracing all his energy into the scale to jump off. And this number here is the maximum weight that he went. So that can calculate his maximum force that honestly he would need to push up in order to get to that height and have that scale have that reading and him to be that far up against Earth's gravitational pull. And then the scale goes blank because there's no weight on it. So basically, when you are lifting something and you're going up and down, gravity is not the only force acting on you anymore, because it takes extra force on your body to push a barbell up or down. So the question is, eventually with further research, you can actually probably figure out how much force you think you have. Thank you.
So we're going to do like a 5-minute Q&A, and then if you guys haven't already done the commentary QR, I can hand that out if you need it. I have questions.
Yeah.
So how were they just the weightlifting? Were they using an actual bar?
Yeah, so they had a barbell weighs about 45 pounds.
Okay.
So what that blue horizontal, hang on. Here. Yeah, these blue horizontal lines is actually equated to his weight plus the barbell. So that's kind of by center of mass. That would be where their center of mass is, and then that's the graph of the motion. And if anything, you can actually see that it has the same effect as in as you go up, you have more force. As you go down, you have less force. So adding the weight will still have the same direction of motion. It's just the numbers will be higher.
How did you measure acceleration?
Acceleration, basically what so I might have these the way. Okay, so from Newton's second law, we see that force is equal to the mass times acceleration. And so basically, if we draw a free body diagram of my friend, I'm going crazy. So basically, this is him standing on the scale. We have gravity that's pushing down. The force of gravity is equal to mass times the force of gravity, which is in any physics class or even math class, they kind of tell you the gravity constant, which is negative 9.8 meters per second squared. That's just a universal thing. And then his mass. Every single time you're on a surface, there's something called a normal force. That's the force of the reason why we're not falling through the face of the earth right now. It's the force that's keeping us standing on the ground. It's the force keeping this table and this pen on the table. So in order to find the total force, you do force is equal to the net force is in this direction is equal to our normal force of the guy minus mass times gravity. Here, normally, if we're not moving, our acceleration is equal to 0. Therefore, that's why our force is equal to our weight. However, here we have acceleration. So mass times acceleration is equal to the normal force minus mass times gravity. In order to find the acceleration, we have to take, from these graphs, I took basically each time plot and plugged in the time, and then I plugged in the weight in order to get a sort of like slope of their acceleration. And you could do a best fit line, however, from each point to each point, that's the acceleration point. And it's negative as it goes down because they're moving in a negative direction. As they move back up, since they're not actually at their current weight, it'll still be in a negative quantity, but you can see that they're moving up past their weight in a sense to make it into a positive direction and vice versa.
We have about 30 seconds left. Anyone else? One more question?
Yeah. How did you measure the weight? Did you just like?
I
give you a-
actually, if you can see in the videos, I basically made them stand on a scale. I had one person filming them doing it, so you can see those there. And to get all my calculations, I had a separate camera that was going to scale by each time frame as it goes up. And I recorded each time the weight shifted based on the time. And then that's how I got a plotted point access, and then I graphed what I saw from there via credits, Google, Excel.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Alright, so our next presenter, we have Emma again. Welcome back up. And she's going to be doing reasons why you're not falling off a vertical roller coaster.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Emma, and I'll be doing study analysis of real life roller coasters and why you're not falling off when you're in a vertical roller coaster loop, and also why the reasons that the classical physics, like the basic theoretical physics, won't work in real life, and it's more complicated than that. Okay, so the very first roller coasters was the Russians mountain, and this was made in the 17th century. It was like a wooden structure, as you can see in the pictures right here, that there's a drop and then it accelerating down, and then it's not like an actual like roller coasters move, but this is like the very first roller coaster structures. And then it's not until 1884 when Philo M. Stevens, he had this idea of creating like the vertical roller coaster loop. And the very first roller coasters was called Flip Flat Railway, and it was installed at the Sea Lion Park. However, there was a problem with this roller coasters. That is, people experience like extreme headaches and pains after going on this roller coasters, and they didn't really realize the problems until like in the early 19s, when they finally found out that the perfectly circular roller coaster loop is extremely dangerous, and so they start building this elliptical loop, which it's not like a perfect circular anymore. It's in elliptic shapes, which alleviated G-force, and I'll be talking about G-force later. And it's also set precedence to all modern looping roller coasters today. And yeah, that's the picture of the new elliptical roller coasters loop. So the reason why you're kind of feeling like for a fraction of a second you feel weightless, and then once another seconds you feel extremely heavy when it starts going down, is because when the cart accelerating into the loop, your inertia. So inertia, well, think of it this way: when you're driving on the cart and then you suddenly stop the brake, did you ever like have the moment where you're like going up like this? It's because your body inertia, it's still moving up in that directions that your car is moving. So it's basically the same for roller coasters. So like when the cart is traveling this way, your body, it still intends to go this way, and as it moves up, it intends to go this way, this way. There's a force that exerts in the opposite directions. And as your cart is right here, it tends to, your inertia change over here, so it keeps pulling up. So that's why when you're at the very top, even though that there's gravity pulling you down, the inertia kind of cancel out that force. And for a fraction of a second, those two forces equals to each other, and then they cancel out. So the result is that you feel weightlessness. And then once the cart goes down, the inertia is moving in the same directions of as the gravity. So that's why you feel a lot heavier, because now it's like pushing you down. It's like the two forces are pushing you down. And that also explains why you're not falling off of roller coasters when you're at the top and inverted down. As I said, it's because the inertia is pulling you up, and then gravity is pulling you down. But those are equally in those magnitude of those forces are equal. So or even the inertia is even larger. So that's why it's keep pulling you up and you're not pulling down. Okay, so, but in order for you to create like that much inertia so that you're not falling down, there must be like a minimum speed that you have to travel. And so we want to find the minimum speed when people are not falling off the ride at the highest point. And so we will assume when they do falling off, so that we set the minimum of the speed that they need to travel. So FC, okay, so I need to explain in a little bit details. So when you're on a vertical loop, in a loop, the net force is the result of a force called centrifugal force that pulls you in the center of the circle. And as you can see, when you're upside down in the highest point, there's obviously a force of gravity pulling you this way, because gravity always pulls you down the earth. But then, as you question, why is the normal force positive instead of negative? Because normal force is the force in opposite of the surface that you're standing on. So let's say you're standing on the ground, there's gravity pulling you down, but there's normal force against the surface of the surface of the floor that pull up. So that's why you're not like falling through the floor. So in other words, the normal force is the force acting against the surface. So if this is the surface, then against the surface means it's pulling this way. So that's why both of these adding up would equals to the force that pulls you into the center. And then since we want to find when the normal force equal to 0, which is when you start to fall off the rides, we will set Fn equals to 0. So that would be equals to, this is like, it's just the regular equations, and you set it up, and then the velocity equals to the radius of the circular loop times gravity, which is 9.8 meter per second squared, and then u squared that product. And this is true applied to any perfectly circular loop. And so the same thing for minimum height drop in a perfect circular loop. So for this one, we're gonna use conservation of energy, which means that the change in potential energies equals to the negative change in kinetic energies. So it just basically means that the potential energy from the initial height drop, when you're going down, it'll convert into kinetic energy. And so by setting up the equations, this is the mass, this is just the math, and then we got the initial height must be 5/2 times larger than the radius of the loop. Okay, but here's one problem. Those two are only true if you have a perfectly circular loop. But it's not possible in real life to sit on a perfectly circular loop, because I'll explain later. But because, as I said like in the beginning, that there was like a problem with the circular loop, the very first circular loop, and people start like experience headaches and stuff like that. And however, we will still testify out if those two conditions satisfy the circular loop, even though the loop that I went on, the roller coasters that I went on, doesn't have the perfectly circular loop. And as you can see, the minimum speed not to fall off the track based on the theoretical physics is 7.4 meter per second. And the speed of the roller coaster that I went on was actually 24.72 meter per second, so it satisfied that requirement. And so we will talk about G-force. And this is exactly the reason why there is no perfectly circular roller coaster loop in real life. So G-force is, in the simple word, is how much weight is you're feeling on that instant. So as I'm standing right here, I am at 1 unit of G-force, which is I am experiencing an acceleration towards the earth, the gravity of 9.8 meter per second. However, when I am at different point, I might experience different G-force, and basically that's what it means. So to find the equation, to find the G-force, we need to make an equation. Like we need to find how to find the G-force, and here is the circle. And by using conservations of energy, we set the potential energies equal to the negative change in kinetic energies and set it up like this. It's all the math. And we got an equations of G equals to the velocity before you got into the ride squared over the radius times gravity, and then plus 3 cosine over the angle at the point where you're on the loop, minus 2. And so using these equations, we will be able to graph out this graph right here. And it tells you on any, And using these equations, I used the minimum speed requirement, and I got this graph right here, which tells me that if I am traveling on a minimum speed requirement in a perfectly circular loop, this is the range of G-force that I will experience. And as you can see right here, I experience the largest of G-force, which is 5 Gs, and the lowest G-force is 6 Gs. And the difference in G-force I experienced is 6 Gs. And in other words, this means that in that, probably 3 seconds, I experienced 5 times heavier than my weight, and at some point I experienced a negative weight in my weight. And it's such a huge and rapid change that it's really not safe for normal humans to go through.
And based on the speed of the flick flap loops that I told you guys earlier, that it was the very like the first circular loops. The riders on that loop experienced at the highest G point, which is like 14 Gs, aka that means that they feel 14 times heavier than their actual weight, like that much force putting onto their body. And according to Google, a normal human can only withstand up to 9 Gs, which is like, I'm really doubting like how are they even survive after that rides. And yeah, so that's like the importance of G-force in roller coasters. And this is also the reason why this much range of G-force, making them not creating these perfectly circular loop anymore. And also, if they are making roller coasters in which there's no deep down, and instead it's just a horizontal track, go straight into a roller coasters, this is the graph of how rapid the change in G-force you might experience. Because there's no transition between the radius of the loop and the infinite radius of the track. And this rapid change of G-force that you experience will cause you fatal, and you probably die. So this is why engineers, they don't really create this loop and then testify people out, and they try to get like the constant G-force or constant acceleration, or a range of G-force that they want, and then they reverse engineer it. So this is the data of G-force that I experienced on the Silver Bullet ride at Knott's Berry Farm. The highest G-force that I experienced was 4.41 G, which is 4.41 times my normal weight. At one instant, that's how heavy I feel. And then the lowest one was 0.01 G, which is like at 0 G, which means for an instant I feel weightless. So does this theoretical physics conforms to real life roller coasters? So obvious answer is no, because if you're using theoretical physics to make like real life roller coasters, as I show you these graph of G-force, it's such a rapid change in G-force that you experience that will cause you fatal and result in death. So that's why when making like real life roller coasters, there are a lot of factors that you have to take into take account of. And now it's really common for roller coasters to have these elliptical shape instead of those perfectly circular loops, because of the G-force and for safety reasons. And here's my reference, and that's it.
We're gonna do like a little bit shorter of a Q&A, just like 3 or 4 minutes. Anybody has any questions at the moment?
What did you use to get your data on the phone?
Sorry?
What app did you use on your phone to get your data?
I think I use Physic. I think it's called Physic Toolbox. Yeah, it's there are a lot of things that you can measure. You can even measure I think accelerations and velocity, like a lot of stuff. But yeah, I choose to measure the G-force that I experienced throughout the rides. And
Did you have that app open while you were on the rides?
yeah,
Cool.
it was like really scary because I was so scared I would drop the phone. And also like you have to hold it straight up. Like it can't be like moving around, because if it moves around, it measures different G-force when it, yeah. So it has to be like straight up. It just have to hold it straight up. Yeah.
Any more questions? Awesome, thank you so much.
the support code, there's this.
Piper, did you ever get one of these?
No. There was one, but it got put in wrong, so it's fine. How does this work?
Oh, and then I guess we also have a sign-in sheet as well.
I didn't do it for my room, so.
Alright, hi, I'm Taylor Benson. I'm going to be talking about the piezoelectric effect. So, piezoelectricity is essentially a property of certain materials where if the crystal is pressed on, then it can generate a voltage across the crystal. So, this was first discovered in 1880 by Pierre and Jacques Curie, and they noticed this effect in quartz. And so here's a little diagram of quartz. This is its crystal unit cell, and so that's pretty much the building blocks that make up the entire crystal lattice of the crystal, or of the quartz, sorry. And pretty much the reason that this occurs is because of a crystal asymmetry in the unit cell, so such that in equilibrium, no effect is observed when nothing is being pressed on it. But then when pressed along one axis, the displacement of ions results in an electric dipole. And so essentially, this electric dipole creates a separation of charge across the crystal, and along each surface, you'll get a positive charge and a negative charge, depending on if you're compressing it or pulling it. And so this surface charge is actually what piezoelectricity is. It's the surface charge. And it was named this from the Greek root piezin, which means to squeeze in Greek. And piezoelectric materials are now known to be dielectric insulators, possessing a certain asymmetry of their crystal unit cell. And so that allows it to polarize under distortion. All right, and then ferroelectric ceramics. These are a class of ceramics known as ferroelectric polycrystalline ceramics, and this piezoelectric effect was observed in these a couple decades after it was first discovered. And in ferroelectric materials, the crystals actually split into a bunch of different regions called domains, and in each of these domains, all of the electric dipoles from each unit cell is aligned. And so pretty much the domains themselves each have a single direction of electric dipole, but inside the entire crystal, all of the domains are randomly oriented, so their net effect is 0. And so the only way to turn one of these materials into a piezoelectric material is through a process called poling. And so I'll explain that on the next slide. But the term polycrystalline, just to clear up the name, is it refers to materials that consist of many small crystal grains rather than a single full crystal. It's a material that's ceramic that has small crystal grains throughout it. And so those crystal grains actually make up each domain of the crystal. All right, and so this is the poling process. So this is before the domains have been pulled, so they're randomly oriented electric dipoles. And then during the pulling process, an external electric field is applied to them, and the dipoles try to align themselves with the electric field. And so once this electric field is removed, some of the dipoles kind of realign themselves to the angle of their own domain, but for the most part, they maintain this same general direction along the direction where the electric field was applied. And so this causes a net dipole in the entire material as a whole. And so then the result of that is it can easily polarize when pressed on. And then, interestingly, I always thought that these domains were, some way to visualize mentally how these materials act, but these domains actually are observable in scans of it. So this is what an actual ferroelectric ceramic looks like, and each of these individual little sections makes up one domain that has its own electric dipole. All right, and then
The material that I mostly am going to be talking about is called PZT, or lead zirconium titanate, and it's a synthetic solid solution of, that has titanate and zirconium in it, and it's a solid solution in ceramic. And it's the most common piezoelectric material because it has a very high Curie temperature. And so Curie temperature is pretty much the point where anything above that, no polarization can occur. So it's beneficial to have a high Curie temperature because you can get polarization at a wide range of temperatures. And it also has really anomalous behavior at this one state that's called the morphotropic phase boundary. And so I'll talk more about that on the next slide also. But for now, this is the unit cell for PZT. So pretty much this blue point in the center is intermittently either titanium or zirconium all throughout the material, and yeah, in different concentrations. All right, so this is a phase diagram for PZT, and these represent the concentrations of zirconium and titanate that are in the solution. And so pretty much when you have a higher concentration of zirconium, you're going to get this rhombohedral or orthorhombic structure. And here's another, like the atomic structure. This is a better representation of it. And then when you have a higher concentration of titanate, you're going to get this tetragonal structure. And then this line right in between, right here, is called the morphotropic phase boundary. And there's pretty much like a coexistence of both phases when you have 48 to 52 as your concentration. And so there's pretty incredible piezoelectric behavior at that point. It's actually the strongest piezoelectric material that we know of, and so it's the most commonly used. And it occurs right at that point. And it's kind of like a mix of these two structures almost that causes like an extreme asymmetry so that it can have minimal pressure to exert like a voltage. All right, and then for my demonstration of it, I decided to create, a little mini circuit to test how much voltage I could get out of one of these materials from just pressing on it. And this is a piezoelectric transducer. Transducer is pretty much just a device that converts energy from one form to another. So for piezoelectricity, it's going to be converting energy from mechanical stress into electrical energy. And so by pressing on this transducer, this gray part represents the piezoelectric portion of it, and this part is brass. So this blue part in between is the piezoelectric material. So this is a PZT plate, so the material I was just talking about. And there's two electrodes on the outsides of it. So when you press down on this, a voltage is generated across here, and you'll get a positive charge on one of these surfaces and a negative charge on the other one of the surfaces. And then when it's connected with a circuit, you can get a current out of it. So you can either get like a light bulb to turn on, or a lot more complex stuff than that, but not with, something of this scale. This is like, for reference, it's only like this big, about, you'll see on the next slide. So this is the circuit schematic that I used to build my circuit, and then this one is the one that I actually created. And so pretty much it's just the piezoelectric transducer, and I didn't have a capacitor in it. I just had an LED on one side of it, and then I needed this. This is called a full wave bridge rectifier, and that pretty much allows you to convert the piezoelectric AC current into DC current so that I can measure DC voltage to use it in a future equation that I'll show. And then unfortunately, I had a video of myself turning it on, and it didn't work with the slideshow. But yeah, this is like what it looked like. When I pressed right here, just this LED would flash, and then I also have the voltage that I got across it was 2.5 volts of DC, and this is the equation that I used to find the force that I had applied across it to get 2.5 volts out of it. And so I needed to use I didn't have enough time to explain all of this because it's quite a short little presentation, but I had to use the piezoelectric coefficient, the dielectric constant, vacuum permittivity, the distance between the electrodes, so like the height pretty much of my transducer, and the electrode plate area, and then putting that all into this equation, I found that I had applied 128 newtons of force, or 28.9 pounds of force, which does make sense because I just kind of like pressed down on it using my body weight, like a little percent of my body weight. And yeah, it's just, I found it pretty remarkable that we could get 2.5 volts out of some material from just applying a little bit of my body weight onto it. So yeah, and it was actually found that the dielectric strength of PZT is around like 200 times stronger than quartz when it was originally found in. So yeah, it's a pretty incredible effect. So that's all.
So we have time for like a 5-minute Q&A.
Yeah.
So out of this project, what was your favorite thing that you learned?
The chemistry of it, for sure. Learning about how the unit cell asymmetry affects the amount of like voltage you can get out of it. I just really, really enjoyed that because I want to go into like condensed matter physics or materials physics in the future. So that was like a really interesting little rabbit hole that I got to go down to continue the project. So yes.
What are some of the common uses of these types of materials?
The transducers are often used in like music, so they'll be used to like in amplifiers and things like that because the vibration affects the voltage, so that you can use like that property of it to show some value that you need to. And then it's also, its first use was in sonar, so like, you know, from like the vibrations, so they used to like detect using sonar when certain ships were coming, or what do they call them? Submarines, when certain submarines were coming from a distance. So yeah, that was the first use of it. Oh, and it's also used, you know, if you're going on like a subway or something like that, like when the little subway turnstiles open, like they'll have piezoelectric material on the ground so that when you step on it, it makes it like go up. So that's cool. Yeah.
Anything else?
What enticed you to do this research project, or how did you come across this?
When I was younger, I was pretty obsessed with Marie Curie, and so I already knew who Pierre Curie was, and I knew that this was his like discovery, and I knew a little bit about it. But then once I took Physics 2, I was able to actually, you know, do a full, complete project and understand what they were talking about when I would like read about it. So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cool, so that was our last presentation.
Thank
So
you.
just like one more big round of applause for everybody who presented. And then thank you all again for our faculty who is here, who helped their students throughout the whole semester and like really kind of inspire them and led them along the way. Omni is really cool, and we're going to be back here again in the spring. So if you guys have friends who want to do Omni, or if you guys want to try to do Omni again, we'd love to have you back. But otherwise, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you.